Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here are some of today's top stories. Georgia's appeals court today agreed to hear former President Trump's bid to disqualify Fulton County DA Fani Willis. A new bill against non-citizen voting in federal elections introduced in the House. Lawmakers want to strengthen safeguards around existing laws. After arrests and violence took place on U.S. universities over anti-Israel protests, lawmakers hone in on K-12 schools. 3 public school leaders testify on anti-Semitism. First up, new development in the Trump Georgia election interference case. Georgia's appeals court today agreed to hear former President Trump's bid to disqualify Fulton County DA Fani Willis. Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee previously allowed Willis to continue prosecuting Trump after Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade resigned. Trump and 8 of his co-defendants in the Georgia RICO case have urged the appeals court to overturn McAfee's ruling. Trump's lawyer said Trump looks forward to arguing why the case should be dismissed and why DA Willis should be disqualified. The court's decision to hear the appeal before trial could cause further delays in the case. The losing side could still appeal the appeals court's decision to the Georgia Supreme Court. We now turn to updates on the Israel-Hamas war. A Biden administration official told Reuters that said the U.S. held up a shipment of over 3,000 bombs to Israel last week. This is reportedly over concerns that they may be used in the Rafah operation, which the U.S. opposes. The official said the 2,000-pound bombs could have an impact in dense urban settings. The Israeli military appeared to respond, saying, quote, "When there are disputes, and they are being resolved behind closed doors in a matter-of-fact way." This comes as CIA Director Bill Burns met with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss ceasefire and hostage negotiations. Inside Gaza, the UN says roughly 50,000 people have evacuated from Rafah, and the Karim Shalom border crossing between southern Gaza and Israel has reopened to allow humanitarian aid. House Republicans are introducing a bill that would ensure illegal immigrants don't vote in federal elections. The bill is being brought by Congressman Chip Roy with the support of House Speaker Mike Johnson.
We now have so many non-citizens in the country that if only 1 out of 100 of those voted, they would cast hundreds of thousands of votes. And since our elections are so razor thin in these days that we're in, and just a few precincts in a few states decide the makeup of Congress and who is elected to the White House, this is a dangerously high number, and it is a great concern to millions and millions of Americans. It could obviously change the outcome of our elections, and this is not an empty threat or concern.
The bill is being dubbed SAVE Act. Non-citizen voting in federal elections is already prohibited, but past Supreme Court decisions limit states' power to make sure voters are actually citizens. The SAVE Act will strengthen safeguards around voter registration to ensure compliance with existing laws. It would require applicants to show proof of citizenship when registering to vote. The bill also provides accommodation for mailing voting registration and for those who don't have documents to prove citizenship. They can undergo a separate process to have their citizenship verified. The SAVE Act would also require Homeland Security to investigate non-citizens who are illegally registered to vote. Republican Senator Mike Lee is scheduled to introduce the same bill to the Democrat-controlled upper chamber. Another incident involving a Boeing-made aircraft. A FedEx Airlines cargo plane landed at Istanbul airport by skidding on its nose. The plane was unable to deploy the front landing gear that controls the front wheel. Turkey's transport ministry said the plane managed to stay on the runway and avoided casualties. The nearly 10-year-old Boeing 767 aircraft was flying from Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport. Pilots informed the traffic control tower at Istanbul Airport that its landing gear failed to open and it landed with guidance from the tower. The pilots held the plane's nose above the runway for several seconds after the main wheels had touched the ground. According to the Skybury Aviation Database, it's an emergency landing maneuver that pilots train for. Airport rescue and firefighting teams made the necessary preparations on the runway before landing. After landing, the plane was doused with a firefighting foam. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice is nearing a decision on whether Boeing broke a 2021 deal to avoid prosecution over 2 fatal 737 MAX crashes. Families of crash victims received a letter inviting them to a May 31st meeting to learn the decision, as reported by ABC. If Boeing violated the agreement, it could face historic criminal charges, impacting the aviation industry. Families have criticized what they see as the DOJ's lack of transparency, but are eager to hear the decision. The meeting marks the 4th session between the DOJ and families, who have been pushing for accountability since the crashes. 3 leaders of public schools testified today before the House Committee on Education and the Workplace. The school chiefs rejected allegations that they let anti-Semitism run rampant in their districts. It's the first committee's hearing on anti-Semitism at K-12 schools. I spoke with NTD's David Lamb for the details. Now, David, so much of the attention is being paid to recent anti-Israel protests and encampment on college campuses. But what did the 3 school chiefs say about anti-Semitism in kindergarten to high school in their respective districts?
Yeah, David, the 3 public school leaders testified that anti-Semitism is happening in kindergarten to 12th grade school grounds. But they're saying they've taken action and that they're doing what they can, through education and, when necessary, discipline. So these 3 leaders are from Berkeley, California, New York City, as well as Montgomery County in Maryland. So let's take a look at the hearing.
Since October 7th, the district has had formal complaints alleging anti-Semitism arising from 9 incidents within our jurisdiction. However, anti-Semitism is not pervasive in Berkeley Unified School District. When investigations show that an anti-Semitic event has occurred, we take action to teach, correct, and redirect our students.
My alma mater that I went to, where a Jewish teacher was targeted in a frightening episode. We didn't accept that. We pushed back on that tremendously.
But what's your definition of pushback?
But in terms of outcomes, what I meant was we suspended students, we removed the principal of the school, we engaged the Simon Wiesenthal Center for a deeper dive in education of those kids.
We have been looking to have our social studies curriculum better reflect our student population, and we have enhanced our Jewish experience education, starting going younger, going into the elementary grades, training teachers so that they can implement Holocaust education in 6th grade.
So as we've heard, all 3 leaders have said they've taken action. And as far as the Berkeley superintendent, she says people don't think their district has been doing anything because they're not publicizing or reporting their actions because of student privacy information laws. Now, as far as the Chancellor David Banks of New York City, he's focusing on education, saying that they're building new curriculum that focuses on the contributions from the Jewish community as well.
I know the congressional lawmakers have held several hearings on college campus, anti-Semitism on college campuses, but what are the congressional lawmakers ultimately concerned about here?
Yeah, so the congressional lawmakers in the hearing, they basically want more discipline and more action. They're saying while there have been some, redirection and reassignment of, students and suspensions, no one has gone fired, basically. So, and that's when people are spreading hateful words and even the students themselves. So committee members previously held anti-Semitism hearings on for college heads for universities, for the University of Pennsylvania and Columbia, as well as Harvard and MIT. But this hearing is the first for the committee for K-12. Now, back in February, the Brandeis Center said that the Brandeis Center is a Jewish legal advocacy organization, and they cited incidents of bullying and harassment of Jewish students in Berkeley. And one instance was where the phrase "kill Jews" was written in the high school bathroom. So the U.S. Department of Education announced a formal investigation into a complaint at Berkeley regarding inside classrooms, hallways, schoolyards, and walkouts ever since October 7th.
All right, thank you so much, David, for updating us on the House Education and Workplace Committee's first hearing on anti-Semitism at K-12 schools. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, David.
A Virginia Congresswoman isn't letting a neurological disorder to stop her from showing up on the House floor. She used an assistive device to talk about a bill she introduced, prompting fellow lawmakers to applaud her courage and inspiration.
Virginia Democrat Representative Jennifer Wexton is retiring from the U.S. House after she was diagnosed with supranuclear palsy, a neurological disorder. She used an assistive app to speak to her colleagues on the House floor Monday. Wexton spoke about a bill she has introduced to rename a post office in Purcellville, Virginia, after the late Madeleine Albright, who served as Secretary of State under President Bill Clinton.
Secretary Albright was a fearless trailblazer for women and a devoted public servant who touched the lives of so many whom she taught, mentored, and worked with, including me. Her relentless defense of democracy and advocacy for human rights, inspired by her own lived experience fleeing Nazi persecution, made her an icon here at home and around the globe. It is my honor to lead this legislation to celebrate her historic life and legacy here in Virginia's 10th Congressional District, where her farm is located, and where she spent as much time as she was able.
Fellow lawmakers took to X, saying she's inspiring, courageous, and fighting every day for the people she represents. Wexton was first elected to the House from Virginia's 10th Congressional District in 2018. She was re-elected in 2020 and 2022. Last fall, she announced that she would not run for a fourth term, deciding to spend more time with her family.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come back. 95 men and women suing Illinois. They allege the state's Department of Corrections failed to protect them from sexual assault in juvenile detention centers. A bear and her cubs enjoy a pool day at one Southern California residence. Their playtime was all caught on video. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Zhang. Survivors who say they were sexually assaulted as youth at Illinois juvenile detention centers have stepped forward with their stories. The men were 3 of the 95 men and women suing the state. NTD's Jason Blair has more.
The lawsuit was filed on Monday and alleges widespread abuse of children at Illinois youth detention centers that spanned over decades.
The sexual abuse in Illinois youth centers has been going on for far too long.
Locke said at a press conference on Tuesday that the cases in the lawsuit span 21 years from 1996 to 2017. Co-attorney in the lawsuit, Todd Matthews, said the acts were carried out by guards, administrators, staff, and other employees of the state of Illinois.
The incidents involved all types of horrific sexual abuse.
I wish I could have used my time in the system to grow and change and become a better man through the discipline and support of the staff around me. Instead, I was sexually abused and neglected.
Many of the plaintiffs say they were threatened or rewarded to keep quiet. 10 of the 95 men and women who filed the lawsuit appeared at the news conference.
I want the world to know what happened to me and the rest of the survivors that's with me standing today.
One plaintiff said his experience led to decades of mental anguish and confusion.
Upon my arrival, I met a predator, a chaplain employed in the youth center who said I could trust him. I was victimized and sexually abused.
I was preyed upon by a dangerous man who held a position of power over me during my time at IYC Harrisburg.
The lawsuit alleges Illinois failed to supervise, discipline, remove, or investigate alleged abusers and enabled the abuse to continue. The lawsuit follows similar complaints at youth detention centers in New Jersey, California, Maryland, and others. Spokespeople for Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and the 2 corrections agencies named in the lawsuit have said that the alleged incidents took place under former administrations and that any allegations of staff misconduct are thoroughly investigated. The lawsuit seeks $2 million per plaintiff. Jason Blair, NTD News.
A U.S. service member who was shot and killed by Florida police has now been identified by the Air Force. NTD's Christina Corona provides more details on the story.
The U.S. Air Force reported that a senior airman, Roger Fortson, stationed at the Special Operations Wing at Hurlburt Field, Florida, was fatally shot on Friday in an encounter involving a sheriff's deputy. According to the U.S. Air Force, Fortson, 23, was at his off-base residence. According to a news release from the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office, a deputy responding to the call of a disturbance in progress reacted in self-defense after he encountered a 23-year-old man armed with a gun. Fortson was transported to a hospital where he later passed away. The deputy has been put on administrative leave while an investigation into the incident is ongoing. Fortson served in the 4th Special Operations Squadron as a special missions aviator. As a member of the squadron's AC-130J Ghost Rider aircrew, one of his responsibilities was to load the gunship's 30mm and 105mm cannons during missions. Okaloosa County Sheriff Eric Aiden announced in a statement on Tuesday evening that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement would investigate the incident, with the state attorney's office conducting an independent review. Aiden expressed sadness on behalf of the sheriff's office regarding the shooting. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Now turning to sports, our shocking development as middleweight champion Jamal Charlo finds himself stripped of his title following an encounter with the law. NTD's Carlos Reyes has more on the story.
The World Boxing Council, or WBC, has stripped Jamal Charlo of his middleweight champion title after the fighter found himself on the wrong side of the law. Charlo faces charges of driving while intoxicated, fleeing the scene of an accident, and eluding police. The incident occurred when Charlo, behind the wheel of his flashy red Lamborghini, collided with another vehicle. Rather than facing the consequences, Charlo chose to flee, leading police on a tense pursuit. With a blood alcohol content of 0.1.5, well above the legal limit, Charlo's actions left no room for dispute. In light of this development, the WBC has extended its support to Charlo, citing concerns for his mental wellness. However, they have made the difficult decision to strip him of his title, paving the way for Carlos Adames to ascend as the new champion in the division. Despite Charlo's impeccable record in the ring, boasting 33 wins, including 22 knockouts, some say this incident tarnishes his reputation and casts a shadow over his future in the sport. As Charlo's attorney expresses optimism for a resolution, fans and pundits alike wait the outcome of this troubling saga. Carlos Reyes, NTD News.
The Las Vegas Raiders will temporarily return to California this summer, as they have reached an agreement to hold their training camp in Orange County. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the story.
The Las Vegas Raiders 2024 training camp will be held at the Jack Hammett Sports Complex in Costa Mesa after the Costa Mesa City Council unanimously voted 7-0 to approve the deal. This complex was home to the Chargers during their first few years in Los Angeles, making the Raiders GM Tom Telesco well acquainted with the venue. The Raiders have committed to investing $600,000 in upgrades to the facilities to meet NFL standards. This renovation is scheduled to begin mid-June.
It's going to be a mix of redoing some of the irrigation systems that we need to get the field properly ready. It's going to be flattening and resurfacing the fields, and all of that contemplates hiring at least 4 local contractors that are going to help with that job.
The rental cost would be $165,000 from July 19th to August 11th. The agreement also includes hosting a team junior training camp for children aged 6 to 12, providing 100 tickets for local students to attend an NFL game in Southern California, donating outdoor weight training equipment to Costa Mesa High School, and offering a $10,000 donation to a local youth sports team. Costa Mesa Mayor John Stevens says he's excited about the Raiders coming to Orange County and mentions he's been a longtime Raiders fan.
And probably the only person who could say that in this room, that I was at their first Super Bowl win. On January 9th, 1977, I was 13 years old, true story. I've enjoyed watching the Raiders. I admire the Raiders. It's a great organization.
The Raiders have also agreed to hold public practices.
They have a loyal fan base like no other and a commitment to excellence. And like I said in my quote, just win, baby, just win.
The Raiders and the New Orleans Saints will be the 4th and 5th teams to host their training camp in Southern California this summer, following the Rams, Chargers, and Cowboys. The Raiders previously held training camp at the Intermountain Healthcare Performance Center in Henderson, Nevada. Christina Corona, NTD News.
A trio of bears enjoy playtime in a Southern California backyard, turning it into their own very fun private playground. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the story.
Footage taken by Ricky Martinez, 87, shows a mother bear and her 2 little cubs strolling along in his backyard in Monrovia on Monday. The mother bear chooses to cool off in the water, while the baby bears seem hesitant about jumping in the pool. The bears can then be seen exploring the back of his house with up-close footage of the bears looking inside through the windows. They then made their way to a tree they climbed and scratched before strolling down the owner's driveway and back into a nearby wooded area. Wildlife experts note that this time of year marks the emergence of bears from their winter dens as they search for food, often bringing them into residential neighborhoods. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up next. Banned Chinese cotton is reportedly sneaking through loopholes in U.S. law again. That's despite Congress having already banned companies from importing the material. Be sure to stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We'd like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.